You are smarter than 99% of the people around you. Your brain processes information faster. You see patterns others miss. You understand complex systems while your peers are still asking basic questions. And yet, you feel like you're failing. You lie awake at night, replaying conversations in your head, wondering why nobody truly gets you. You start projects with brilliant ideas only to abandon them because they're not perfect enough. You feel isolated, exhausted, and somehow, despite all your intellectual gifts, profoundly alone. If this sounds like you, or someone you know, you're not imagining it. You're experiencing something psychologists have been studying for decades. And today, on Wired Logic, we're uncovering the invisible struggles of highly intelligent people. Before we dive into the struggles, we need to establish what we're actually talking about. When researchers refer to highly intelligent people, they're not just talking about someone with a good memory or a high test score. We're discussing individuals who operate at the extreme end of the cognitive spectrum. According to research from the Davidson Institute, individuals with an IQ of 150 or above represent only about 5 to 7 people out of every 10,000. These are people whose intellectual capacity isn't just slightly above average. It's profoundly different. They don't just think faster. They think in fundamentally different ways. Philip Powell and Tony Hayden, in their seminal research published in the Roper Review, identified a critical distinction between different levels of intelligence. Average intelligence individuals are analytical thinkers who require external structure. They reason step by step, methodically working through information as it's presented to them. Moderately gifted individuals operate as synthetic thinkers. They can skip multiple logical steps, integrating complex arguments into unified wholes. They're independent thinkers who can generate their own intellectual structure. But highly gifted individuals are something else entirely. They're integrated thinkers. They possess the rare capacity to be both analytically rigorous and synthetically creative simultaneously. They can perceive the most minute details, assign proper weight to each one, and integrate these into large-scale pictures of entire situations. They think like Sherlock Holmes in Powell's famous analogy, not just like Inspector Lestrade or Dr. Watson. This capacity to create structure, to generate knowledge, to understand the inherent patterns and logic in complex systems means that highly intelligent people don't just receive information. They reshape it. They question it. They see what's missing. And this fundamental difference in cognitive processing, while incredible, is also the root of many of their struggles. Here's a paradox that researchers keep discovering. The greater your intelligence, the greater your potential for psychological distress. A study from the British cohort study, which tracked thousands of individuals from childhood through age 50, found something remarkable. Intelligence was positively correlated with mental health up to a certain point. But at extreme levels of intelligence, something shifts. The relationship becomes nonlinear. At the highest levels, highly intelligent individuals actually begin experiencing unique challenges that can outweigh the typical benefits of being intelligent. One major contributing factor is something called the too much of a good thing effect. The highly gifted possess an extraordinary capacity to create intellectual structure. They can conceive of ideals, possibilities, and frameworks for understanding the world. But this same ability becomes problematic when turned inward toward themselves. Highly intelligent individuals develop what researchers call an ideal self that is often unattainable. Because they understand intellectual excellence better than almost anyone else, they develop personal aspirations that are extraordinarily high. In fact, they might develop aspirations that literally no human being could achieve. The discrepancy between this impossible ideal self and their actual self becomes a source of chronic disappointment and low self-esteem. This creates what researchers call low self-esteem despite high achievement. The highly gifted person might accomplish things that would make ordinary people proud. They might create important work, earn advanced degrees, or solve complex problems. But because they're measuring themselves against an ideal self that was created by their own exceptional mind, they feel like failures. This phenomenon was documented by Hollingworth Terman, and Odin in classic studies of the exceptionally gifted. The pattern is consistent. The higher the level of giftedness, the greater the chance of psychological and social adjustment difficulties. The highly gifted are at what researchers call a great potential for being psychosocially injured by their own mental gifts. If you've heard of imposter syndrome, you might think it's about feeling like you don't deserve your success. But the research suggests something more specific happens with highly intelligent people. They don't feel like imposters because they haven't earned what they have. They feel like imposters because they see everything that's still unknown. The highly gifted are acutely aware of the limits of their own knowledge. They understand how vast the world of information actually is. They recognize gaps in their understanding that others don't even perceive exist. This creates a paradoxical situation. Their intelligence makes them painfully aware of their own ignorance. And from this awareness springs a particular form of perfectionism. Recent meta-analyses examining perfectionism and imposter phenomenon have found that rigid, self-critical forms of perfectionism are strongly linked to feeling like an imposter. But this isn't narcissistic perfectionism, where someone needs to be perfect to feed their ego. This is something darker. It's a belief that anything less than excellence is worthless. Highly intelligent people often internalize the message that intelligence is their primary value. They're praised for being smart. Their identity becomes wrapped up in their intellectual achievements. This creates what researchers call achievement-contingent self-worth. Their sense of personal value is entirely dependent on their accomplishments. And because they set impossibly high standards, they're perpetually failing in their own eyes. The perfectionism that develops is often characterized by procrastination. A highly intelligent person might delay starting a project because they're waiting for the perfect conditions, the perfect idea, or the perfect understanding of what needs to be done. This procrastination isn't laziness. It's the manifestation of perfectionism paralyzing action. One of the most puzzling phenomena in gifted education is called gifted underachievement. And this is crucial to understand because it seems to defy logic. How can someone with exceptional intelligence underachieve? A comprehensive systematic review published in PMC found that between 9 and 28% of gifted students experience significant underachievement. Some researchers have suggested the rate could be as high as 50%. These are people who score in the top percentiles on intelligence tests, but don't perform at a level commensurate with their abilities. This isn't because they lack intelligence. And it's not because they lack the capacity to succeed. Research reveals that underachievement in gifted individuals is driven primarily by internal factors, motivational issues, emotional social difficulties, and self-regulatory problems. The gifted underachiever has the cognitive ability but lacks the motivation, emotional resilience, or belief in their own worth to apply that ability. One critical factor is what researchers call goal valuation. Highly intelligent students need to understand why something matters. They need to find meaning in their work. If they don't see the value in an assignment or a goal, no amount of intelligence will drive them to pursue it. They'll recognize it's beneath them, or they'll perceive it as meaningless busy work, and they simply won't engage. Another major contributor is poor self-regulatory strategies. Self-regulation is the process of identifying goals and developing strategies to achieve them. But highly intelligent people often struggle with this in counterintuitive ways. They might set goals that are too vague or too ambitious. They might fail to break complex tasks into manageable steps. They might avoid seeking help because admitting they need help feels like admitting failure. The research shows that gifted underachievers have lower academic self-efficacy than achieving peers. They don't believe they can succeed. And once this belief forms, it becomes self-fulfilling. They don't attempt challenging work because they don't believe they'll succeed, so they don't develop the skills that would help them succeed. Imagine being able to think about ideas that virtually nobody around you can fully comprehend. Imagine seeing solutions to problems that your peers don't even recognize as problems. Imagine having intellectual interests that seem bizarre or incomprehensible to everyone else. This is the daily experience of many highly intelligent people. And it creates something that researchers consistently identify: profound loneliness and social isolation. One study on the well-being of gifted adults found that twice exceptionality and lower socioeconomic status are risk factors for the development of psychopathologies. But something else emerged too: isolation due to intellectual mismatch. Gifted individuals struggle to find meaningful social connection because they function at a different cognitive level than their peers. The problem isn't that they're antisocial, it's that they struggle to relate. A highly intelligent person might find small talk exhausting because they're thinking several conversational steps ahead. They might struggle with social skills, not because they lack the cognitive capacity to understand social dynamics, but because they're processing so much information that social interaction feels overwhelming. This creates a vicious cycle. They withdraw socially to reduce overstimulation. Their peers perceive this withdrawal as arrogance or snobbery. They receive negative feedback about their social attempts, and their sense of isolation deepens. Rainforest Mind, a blog dedicated to gifted psychology, notes that the lonely world of the gifted adult is characterized by feeling too smart, too sensitive, too emotional, and too curious for the people around them. Research from the PMC study on intellectually gifted individuals found something striking. Qualitative data show gifted individuals expressing feeling isolated, overstimulated, and struggling with their identity. Some refer to their high intelligence as a disability because you can't understand the norm. There's a concept in psychology called psychological overexcitability, and it's specific to highly intelligent people. This isn't hypersensitivity or anxiety disorder. It's a heightened and more intense way of experiencing and responding to the environment. Highly intelligent people don't just think more. They feel more intensely. They perceive more stimuli. Their nervous systems are tuned to detect subtleties that others miss. This is actually an asset when channeled properly, but it also means they experience the world as more overwhelming. This relates to what's called the positive disintegration theory. According to this framework, high intelligence is positively related to psychological overexcitability. This heightened sensitivity and intense emotional processing can lead to experiences that feel like mental health challenges: anxiety, depression, overwhelm, and burnout. But here's the crucial point. This isn't a disorder in the traditional sense. It's an outcome of how their brains process information. A highly intelligent person experiencing anxiety isn't necessarily struggling with an anxiety disorder. They might be a person with a more sensitive nervous system who's exposed to too much stimulation and hasn't yet learned adequate coping strategies. The research is clear that high intelligence alone doesn't cause mental illness, but it does create vulnerability to certain psychological challenges when combined with other factors: perfectionism, high expectations, social isolation, and lack of understanding from others. Here's something subtle but profound that highly intelligent people face. They struggle to get accurate feedback about themselves. Average intelligence individuals develop self-concept through feedback from others. Teachers tell them they're doing well or poorly. Parents praise or criticize their performance. Peers respond to their behavior. And through this feedback, they develop a sense of who they are. But highly gifted individuals have a different problem. Their advanced need-to-know tends to narrow their self-concept. They're so focused on understanding and learning that feedback becomes harder to come by. And when it does come, it's often inaccurate. Teachers and authority figures sometimes feel threatened by highly intelligent students. These students know more about certain subjects. They ask questions that reveal gaps in the teacher's knowledge. This can be threatening to someone in a position of authority. So instead of providing honest feedback, they might downplay the student's abilities, highlight mistakes, or insist that learning occur in a particular way. Peers, especially in childhood, find it hard to relate to highly intelligent people. They might give invalidating feedback, telling a gifted student they're weird or too smart, or showing off. If the gifted person internalizes this feedback, they develop a self-concept based on underrating themselves. There's a famous case documented by Barbara Clark of a young woman who spent 18 years believing she wasn't intelligent. She asked more questions than other students in class, which made her feel stupid rather than smart. It wasn't until she reached university and learned the characteristics of giftedness that she questioned this belief. She called her parents and discovered she had a measured IQ of 165. School personnel had advised her parents never to tell her about her extraordinary intelligence. This is the feedback problem. Highly gifted people are often denied accurate information about their own minds. They develop distorted self-concepts, and this distortion becomes a source of psychological injury. There's a persistent myth that highly intelligent people have more mental health problems. The truth is more nuanced than that. Research is generally clear that there's no simple linear correlation between IQ and mental disorders. Having a high IQ doesn't cause depression or anxiety disorder. However, the British cohort study found something important. At extreme levels of intelligence, the relationship between intelligence and mental health becomes nonlinear. The benefits of being intelligent start to diminish at the highest levels, and unique challenges emerge. This isn't about mental illness in the diagnostic sense. It's about psychological struggles that arise from the combination of high intelligence with environmental factors. When you're thinking about ideas that nobody around you understands, when you're setting standards for yourself that are impossible to meet, when you're aware of every flaw in your own work, when you're experiencing the world with greater intensity than others, psychological distress becomes more likely. Mensa members, a group of people with IQs in the top percentile, show elevated rates of affective disorders, anxiety disorders, ADHD, and autism spectrum disorder compared to the general population. But this might not be because intelligence causes these conditions. It might be because the combination of high intelligence with other factors creates conditions where these challenges emerge. The research also suggests something important about resilience. Highly intelligent people have greater cognitive resources for managing stress. They can develop sophisticated coping strategies. They can understand psychological concepts that help them make sense of their experience. But they also have higher awareness of what could go wrong, greater existential anxiety, and deeper insight into the limitations of human existence. If you're a highly intelligent person struggling with these challenges, understanding them is the first step. You're not broken. You're not failing. You're experiencing predictable psychological responses to existing at an extreme end of the cognitive spectrum. Research on interventions for gifted underachievement points to several effective strategies. First, addressing motivational factors is crucial. You need to reconnect with what actually matters to you, not what should matter. Goal valuation is powerful. Spending time understanding why your work matters, finding meaning in your tasks, and connecting your efforts to your deeper values. Second, developing self-regulatory strategies is essential. This means breaking large projects into smaller steps, setting realistic timelines, seeking feedback before things feel perfect, and practicing productive failure. Highly intelligent people often avoid asking for help because it feels like admitting weakness. But seeking feedback and collaboration is actually a sign of sophisticated thinking. Third, addressing perfectionism requires self-compassion. You need to develop what researchers call a growth mindset, understanding that your abilities can develop over time and that failure is information, not indictment. Your self-worth doesn't depend on perfect achievement. Fourth, actively cultivate your social connections. Seek out other highly intelligent people. Engage in communities, whether online or offline, where your intellectual interests are valued. Loneliness is not inevitable. It's often a result of trying to fit into environments where you don't belong. Finally, consider therapy or coaching with someone who understands giftedness. Many mental health professionals have limited training in the specific challenges of highly intelligent people. Finding someone who understands the psychology of giftedness can be transformative. If you know a highly intelligent person, you can help. Research on parent and teacher impacts is clear. Your consistent, honest feedback matters profoundly. Tell highly gifted children the truth about their abilities. Don't hide their intelligence or downplay their gifts, but also help them understand that intelligence doesn't determine worth, that failure is part of learning, and that there's always something to learn from somebody. As Powell and Hayden noted, each of us, no matter how able, will meet others who can help us meet our needs. Create environments where it's safe to be intelligent. Celebrate curiosity. Tolerate complexity. Allow projects that don't have neat, predetermined outcomes. Value questions as much as answers. Understand that social struggles don't mean social disability. Highly intelligent people might need explicit guidance in social skills, not because they lack capacity, but because they're processing so much information. They might prefer depth to breadth in relationships. Honor that preference rather than pathologizing it. Finally, model self-compassion. Show the highly intelligent people in your life that you value yourself beyond achievement, that you accept your limitations, and that you're learning continuously. This is far more powerful than any lecture about self-acceptance. The invisible struggle of highly intelligent people is real, persistent, and widely misunderstood. But it's not inevitable. Understanding the psychological patterns that emerge at extreme levels of intelligence is the first step toward creating lives that feel fulfilling rather than perpetually disappointing. Highly intelligent people have extraordinary potential to contribute to society. They can solve problems others can't see. They can create frameworks for understanding the world. They can innovate and lead. But they can only do this when they've addressed the internal struggles that come with their gifts. If you're highly intelligent and you've been struggling with feelings of isolation, perfectionism, or inadequacy despite your accomplishments, know that you're not alone. And know that these struggles aren't reflections of your worth. They're reflections of the unique challenges that come with having an exceptional mind. If you found this video valuable, please subscribe to Wired Logic for more deep dives into psychology, intelligence, and the invisible struggles we all face. Leave a comment below telling us which aspect of high intelligence resonates most with your experience. And if you know someone who needs to hear this, share it with them. You might help them understand themselves in a way that changes everything. Thank you for joining us on Wired Logic, where we explore the hidden complexities of human psychology. We'll see you in the next video.